Hello, this is XP Escobar, and I'm going to be making my To Pimp Butterfly video. The video and the review of this amazing album. To start off this album, we got Wesley's Fury, which it starts kind of quietly, kind of like sounding quietly, and starts with an old sample. I mean, it switches like to this kind of funky, like bassy synth sound, and Kendrick shows his vocal ability over the instrumentation, and it's really well, and it mashes really well. It's very beautiful, and the production on it is absolutely elite. I'd say lyrically, it's one of the songs talking about Kendrick returning more to his Compton ways, and that's one of the biggest things of the tracks on this album. Personally, it's a very catchy track to me, and there's nothing done badly with the production and anything. I'd say overall this track is easily a 10 out of 10 for me. Okay, For Free. So this one's an interlude, and I'd definitely say that the transition from Wesley's theory to For Free is so well. It's a very great transition to a jazz like instrumental. And then there's basically this woman just complaining about Kendrick and basically complaining about stuff like how his dick isn't good enough, or how, I don't know, just a lot of stuff about sex and how Kendrick isn't real enough, basically, and saying that he's not like a good rapper. And then Kendrick basically just responds with talking about his, in a kind of creative way with like lots of good lyrics and stuff. I'd say that this is definitely one of the weaker moments on this album, even though I do really like this part, and this is still better than a lot of artists' discographies. So I'd say that it's a 9.5, probably. It's good, and I think it's pretty creative. King Kunta, it's just this one has a very funk vibe to it, and like has a very amazing groove. And just to be honest, not just from Kendrick, this is just one of the catchiest songs in general that I've ever heard. It's done very well. Sampling is done amazingly, and and then the chorus just has catchy flows thrown across with pretty memorable lyrics, and then there's an instrumental change for the second chorus, and it's very like kind of ominous feeling, and it just feels amazing, and just the flow over all of it is just incredible. And the outro is just great with a guitar, and just again, sampling is very strong. It's a very big thing you would notice in this album. If you listen full through, you may really notice the sampling. Institutionalized. I'd say it's a more relaxed instrumental. Kendrick kind of just talks about being trapped as a gangster, basically, in life, and talking about how hard it is to stop. Just the atmosphere with how the sampling works, and just Kendrick vocally and flow wise is a little bit chiller on the verses until the chorus hits, where he does a more experimental voice to try to represent his grandma, talking about just how his life is just how things won't change. And Snoop Dogg did a pretty good job on the post chorus. I didn't have any complaints about it. It was good. It was probably one of Snoop Dogg's most notable performances possibly ever. And I'd say the flute just when it's added at one point just adds very swiftly and works very well. It sounds great and put together very well. I'd say this one isn't comparable to the other tracks as much, which is probably an unpopular opinion, but I'd still say it's very amazing and it's definitely better than Ain't Free, basically. And so I'd say that song is I'd say the song's a 9.8 out of 10. These Walls. It's basically a track that has like this groovy funk sound. And basically after they first start bringing up the poem, they show very good signs of sampling and instrumentation with composition. When the instrumental changes, it is very great, and Kendrick does a very good job with his flow, and he has a great delivery. And then the amazing poem that started at the beginning continues onto the outro. I'd give that track a 10 out of 10. And yeah, I'd say now we're on to the song You. I said the instrumentation is great on this song. It's a more emotional approach than Kendrick usually takes, or probably one of the most emotional ones. It's basically Kendrick just ranting while drunk about many emotional topics, or at least he's trying to sound like he's drunk at least. It's a great song, and I just have no complaints about it. It was one of my favorites, but I wouldn't say it's the best in my opinion anymore. I'd say it's a 10 out of 10. I'd say that we are right now on Alright, and there's just a jazzy instrumentation just starting off, and Kendrick is basically just talking about everything being fine, and he is talking about stuff. He talks about just upsetness and God, and this has good instrumentation. I love this song, but I don't know, it's just kind of hard to explain, if that makes any sense, how I really just love this song, basically. And then the poem continues and gets longer and adds more to the deep poem. Towards the end, that's the outro. And 10 out of 10 is what I give that. The next one is For Sale. That one's also an interlude. And I'd say this interlude just has a very relaxing vibe to it. Like, the just sound of it is very great. The instrumentation's really nice and just great. He talks about romance a tiny amount. He also really, really talks about the devil a lot. He just talks about, like, the devil trying to corrupt him when he talks about Lucy, basically. In my opinion, this is one of the most underrated tracks, and it's not talked about enough when people talk about To Pimp a Butterfly. And I think it's very relaxing and doesn't fail to relax me. And I think the synths during the outro are amazing, and when it starts to fade into ominous sound, as Kendrick starts telling the poem once again, it's very well done. I'd give that track a 10 out of 10. The next track I'm going to be talking about is the song Mama. I'd say this song is very funky with sound like funk vibes, and it has relaxing kind of just like minor R&B vibes to me. I'd say Kendrick is talking about He's talking about the crazy success of his music, but talking about how it still was able to bring him back home to Compton. He's talking just about the neighborhood of Compton and a lot of the things in Compton, like the stuff he knows. And he is also talking about trying to help people with his lyrics. He also has a very hard verse towards the end of the song, with that verse having a great flow and experimental vocals. This song also has a great fade out. I'd give this track a 10 out of 10. Hood Politics. I'd say this one sounds less like jazzy or R&B as much, and it sounds more like just a slow, relaxing rap beat. And he's talking just about life in Compton, and he's talking about snitches and gangsters that a lot of times are fake. And he just talks about how the system makes it hard for African Americans in Compton. And as it ends, the poem gets longer as it ends the track. And there's an ominous synth around the poem with a mildly triumphant trumpet. And I'd say that track, again, 10 out of 10. You're going to notice a pretty large pattern on how I rate these tracks because I think most of them are completely amazing. So yeah. How much a dollar cost is the next track? I'd say there's a very jazz vibe to it, and to this instrumental and beat with a relaxing piano. Kendrick here is talking about poverty and other poor people. And again, sampling is done amazingly. It's a very great thing here. And I think this is also another very underrated track on the album. In my opinion, it's one of the best on the album. And I think the vibe is done, and Kendrick lyrically, it does very well. It's like talking about himself being selfish after becoming famous more than he was before he wasn't famous. And I'd just say this is so beautiful, and I haven't heard anything this beautiful since I just re-listened to it today. And I'd give this a 10 out of 10 again, because just practically I'd give all these tracks a 10 out of 10. This is just an amazing album. Okay. Song that's next is Complexion. It has a kind of mild funk vibe, but it also sounds pretty R&B. And Kendrick is basically just talking about race not mattering, and sounds kind of romantic towards someone, basically, and just not caring about this love interest's race. I'd say, as usual, the instrumentation is absolutely incredible, and a woman starts rapping after Kendrick, or a woman rapper. She talks about needing to feel beautiful regardless of race and just how other people need to, and she just talks about how she's conscious of her own race, and I'd say the instrumental fade out is done very well. And I'd say that this song is a 10 out of 10, like the other ones. The Blacker the Berry. This song, it's probably my favorite on the album, if not, it's in the top 3, and I'd say, but to actually talk about it, I'd say this song just starts off with a very ominous sounding, instrumental, and very ominous sounding, and just kind of low-key singing from Kendrick on the chorus, and there's a very, very great synth line that sounds kind of that has an epic vibe over it, and it's just basically just being played while Kendrick is rapping. And Kendrick uses this aggressive delivery with aggressive flow just while dissing racism, and it just sounds amazing. And I'd say the sampling, it's done very well, and just everything about it and it makes me just feel chills down my spine, because it's just a shocking song. All of the lyrics, it's not trying to scare me. It's giving a good point, and he's just making a lot of great points, and it's just scary that racism has to even exist. And I say that the instrumental change is beautiful, and the fade out was just done very beautifully and very well. And yeah, I'd say the song is a 10 out of 10. You Ain't Gotta Lie is the next track. Kendrick uses a very high-pitched delivery, like he uses a more high-pitched delivery, and he does well at rapping while the instrumentation is also very good. He talks about just people trying to impress Kendrick, like, as just by acting like they're gangsters, but he just tells them to act like themselves. Like, and just the changes in chorus instrumentals are notably great. And I just say the song is incredible. It has a lot of very good elements, and lyrically, it's pretty cool and just kind of friendly and a great track. I'd say this is a 10 out of 10. The live version, technically. This song kind of just starts with a crowd speaking, which makes sense because it's like a live version, and it has like a guitar playing, and Kendrick is talking kind of about self-acceptance for himself. Sampling is done pretty well, and the cool thing is that it kind of just sounds instrumentally pretty different than most of To Pimp a Butterfly, and I like a lot of times when artists branch out on the album that they're on, or also do some unique things. I'd say that Kendrick is just like, and then there's like a choir and people are arguing, and Kendrick is just asking about the amount of black people that died this year, and then he kind of has a rap verse without an instrumental. I'd say that song is a 10 out of 10. We have now gotten to Mortal Man. Wow, me reviewing this album has actually gone by pretty quickly for myself. I'd say Mortal Man is very, very great as a track. I'd say that the pianos and choir just start off the instrumental and it sounds amazing. The flow from Kendrick is great, and just the lyrics are basically just asking is Kendrick just basically asking his fans if he does something, will they be okay with that? And just kind of questioning if he has freedom on how he can act after all of the deep messages he's made. A beautiful violin ends up coming in, and Kendrick is talking about just the messages in his music, and he just takes the perspective of his fans, and he's basically talking about how, from their perspective, how they argue about how Kendrick acts. And the fading out is done well, and very well right before Kendrick gets to the final part of his poem. Kendrick is also having quite a long conversation with Tupac for an interview, and yeah, basically the instruments in the background during their interview, and Kendrick asks him questions, and Tupac is able to answer, and it sounds completely coherent, even though Kendrick wasn't even rapping when Tupac was even still alive. Also, rip Tupac. But yeah, he was taking genius parts of interviews that Kendrick or that Tupac has done, and putting them in as Tupac asks him questions, basically. I'd give this track a 10 out of 10. And yeah, in my opinion, To Pimp a Butterfly is no doubt the greatest rap album of all time. I think it's mostly because of the masterful composition, the great poetry, and amazing sampling ability. It tackles the subjects of racism, poverty, trapped in gang life, and other personal experiences that happened to Kendrick. To give this album anything less than a 10 is absolutely hilarious, because this album is really amazing, and in my opinion, the greatest to ever be made. I'd give this a 10 out of 10, this album. Another thing to say is, this is like my fourth review I've maybe made. The third one I tried to make wouldn't upload. I may work on that a little bit, I don't know. But if you have any criticisms that would make me better at reviewing, or just criticisms about rapping, just for me, just hand them, because I want just people to be able to help me do the best. And yeah. And if you have any questions about this, one of the big questions I might wonder is, because this review is going to technically be shorter than the Whole Lotta Red review, and y'all may be wondering why. And the main reason is I don't think I'm a skilled enough reviewer to review something for a very long time. But I can talk pretty much in depth about every track, about how I like it. But it's not that easy to talk about. To talk about something for a very long period for me. But I still think this is a very amazing album. And yeah. This is very great, and yeah. Thank you for watching, and thank you for voting for To Pimp a Butterfly to be one of the albums for me to do and to review, because I'm very glad I did this. It's definitely better than the last review that was on the channel, and I definitely think that this album has so much quality put into it, and it's just so amazing. But yeah, thanks for watching. This is XB Escobar. If you haven't, like and subscribe, and see you later. Bye.